Great. Good morning, folks. Welcome to our Board of Supervisors meeting of August 15th. Sorry for the delay, technical difficulties. So if we could do a roll call, please.
Thank you. Chair Madrone, we'll start with you.
Present.
Supervisor Wilson?
Here.
Supervisor Bohn?
Yep.
And Supervisor Bushnell?
Good morning.
And Supervisor Arroyo is gone for this meeting.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Please join us for the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you very much. So do we have any modifications to the agenda? CIO Hayes.
Sorry, Chair Madrone. Oh, there's no modifications today.
Okay, great. We do have a certificate of adjournment, but I believe that Supervisor Bohn would like to read something at the beginning of the meeting, because often when we adjourn, there's nobody here anymore. So we'll do that right now. Supervisor Bohn.
Well, after a valiant battle last week, we lost Jim Mowry, who was formerly head of the Drug Task Force and just graduated from the Brock Institute, I think, of Supervisorial. He was always striving to do better, and he always did better. He was also somebody that could make lemonade out of lemons. He proved that a few years ago when he was, but he was a good guy, and I've never seen, and it's hard for me because I look back on Charlie Lamb, I look back on Rich Schlesinger, good guys that'd still be working if it wasn't for cancer. And Jim was a father of four, a dedicated employee, a husband, been with the force, I believe, 16 years. And I asked Sheriff Hansel to say a couple words also. Sheriff Hansel and his admin staff were able to see Jim the day before he passed and give him his shadow box through retirement and everything else. And I can tell you, this one hit a lot of guys really hard because he was involved in his kids' youth activities, had a great relationship everybody would be jealous of with his wife. It was a tough deal, and Jim was I considered Jim a friend. I've been by the house a few times and had a really good talk with his father last week afterwards. And a father's biggest fear is what happened to him burying his child. But he was so proud of his son that he was able to hold it together for his daughter-in-law and his grandkids. So good guy, and it's a guy that, for you that knew him, you're pretty lucky. For you that didn't, sorry you never met him. Sheriff, thank you for popping up to say something.
Yeah, it's hard to come out here and address this. This is something that happened way too quick, way too soon. Jim, just 4 months ago, was a thriving member of our department,
My apologies.
it's okay. It's a very difficult thing to stand before you today and talk about this. Jim Mowry was not only a dedicated professional, but also a dedicated family man and a husband. Like you said, father of four. And
Youngest 6.
yes, and the youngest is 6, little Jackson. And so it's hard not to get emotional about this, because just 4 months ago, Jim was among us, feeling really great, and then cancer hit him, and in the short 4 months, he's been taken from us. Jim was the epitome of being a deputy sheriff. Born and raised in Humboldt County, part of this community, wanted to make this community better, and did that every chance he possibly could get. Not for himself, not to call attention to himself, but to always put others before him. And that's how he lived his life. Not seeking pats on the back, not seeking anything for himself, but always giving to others. And that's what makes it so difficult to lose one of our own. I appreciate the gesture. The family appreciates the gesture of closing today in honor of Jim. But it's something that we're still processing. It's something that we're still dealing with. And anyway, we appreciate your thoughts and prayers as we move on.
Thank you very much, Sheriff Hansel.
Okay, and with that, we're going to go on to the next item on our agenda, which we're going to read a retirement resolution for Tim Ash. If Tim could come on up, and we'll read this resolution in honor of Tim's service. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Whereas Tim Ash has volunteered as a member of the Humboldt County Behavioral Health Board since 2006, consistently attending and participating in meetings and serving the community. And whereas Tim has served 3 terms as board chair, organizing and leading the Behavioral Health Board with confidence and kindness. And whereas Tim has volunteered with the National Alliance on Mental Illness for nearly 20 years, advocating for the voice of individuals and families affected by mental illness. And whereas Tim was instrumental in the formation of Humboldt's Sequential Intercept Mapping Initiative, which aims to minimize criminal justice involvement for people with mental illness. And whereas one of Tim's fellow board members called his time on the Behavioral Health Board an incredible service, adding that they don't know anyone who has been on the board longer or served as chair more times. And whereas Department of Health and Human Services Administration and DHHS Behavioral Health Administration have benefited greatly over the many years from Tim's compassionate lens, practicality, and wise counsel. And whereas as chair of the Behavioral Health Board Legislative Committee, Tim confidently led the board's careful consideration and advocacy of state legislation impacting the behavioral health system and the lives of people experiencing mental illness. And whereas as a member, this is a 2-pager for Tim here, so. And whereas as a member of the Crisis Intervention Team, the CIT, Stakeholder Committee and Curriculum Committee, Tim was integral in building relationships with key stakeholders and investigating issues that were crucial in the growth and development of Humboldt's CIT program. And whereas Tim served as a member of the Blue Ribbon Task Force, which met multiple times in 2017 and 2018 in order to thoughtfully discuss recommendations made in the Transitional Organizational Assessment of DHHS, published in 2016 and reported back to the Board of Supervisors. And whereas Tim's knowledge of and commitment to addressing the criminalization of mental illness has proven deeply valuable in all his service and roles. And whereas Tim takes a whole system approach to behavioral health, lifting up the many ways our community's multiple public systems impact people with mental illness. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors hereby recognizes, honors, and expresses our gratitude to Tim Ash for his years of dedication to the Behavioral Health Board and tireless commitment and advocacy for those suffering from mental illness in our community, and wishes him happiness as he steps down from his official capacity on the board and embarks on his next chapter. Congratulations, Tim.
Thank you. Thanks for this. Thanks to DHHS as well. Sheriff Hansel got me a little emotional there. Yeah, I have a nephew who was in law enforcement who we lost last year in line of duty, so bad timing for this. Anyway, I just have a couple things I wanted to say. It was my pleasure to serve on the board for all that time. I appreciate the opportunity. I learned a lot. Don't know how much I contributed. I was wondering, I'd like to meet the guy you were talking about, Steve. But anyway, I appreciate the support that I know I have gotten, starting out with someone who knew Zippo about this whole area. The support through the years from Connie Beck and Emmy and Phil Crandall, former mental health folks, Carolyn Stein and Donna Wheeler, and all their staff over time have helped me understand a real complicated system. Anyway, like I said, I've learned a lot. I'm not done advocating, but it's time in terms of the board. Who knows, I may ricochet. But anyway, through the years, I've seen I won't go through them, but just a lot of really positive changes in this county as far as mental health. And as long as there's money available, mostly from Sacramento, DHH staff is ready and willing to put those programs out. But there's just a lot more that we can do if we ever are able to get those kind of resources. I guess the final thought that I don't know if I learned it, I guess I did, was that the folks that we see out on the street that are, maybe just quietly hurting or they're acting out, they're all no-fault illnesses. They didn't ask for these illnesses. And each of those kids, when they were born, they had parents who were kind of tickling their chin and listening to them giggle and watching them grow up. And then, all of a sudden, boom, at different ages, but a lot of times in their late teens, things kind of come unraveled. And they, all of a sudden, they've got a really serious and cruel illness. And that's what when I see these folks on the street, you try to remember, because sometimes they're disagreeable. And I just try to remember that they didn't ask for it. They were somebody's kid. A lot of times they're not able to handle them, so they're out in the street. Anyway, just my hope is that we, over time, are able to provide them better support so that, we don't criminalize the symptoms that are happening. We may have to corral them a little bit until they get squared away, but we don't categorize them and criminalize them like we do somebody that's more sociopathic and doesn't give a damn about other people and just does their thing. But anyway, these folks, like I said, didn't ask for it, and they deserve just the basics. In my opinion, they deserve, roof over their head, food, and decent medical care, just like any other illness that somebody kind of walked into. Anyway, with that, I thank you guys. Appreciate this.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for helping us rebuild the board to almost full status with membership. That was quite a challenge.
I think the lack of COVID.
Thank you, Tim. Please, Emmy.
That right there was the work of ending stigma and discrimination, right? So thank you for that. Good morning, Chair Madrone, Supervisors. I'm Emmy Botzler-Rogers, Behavioral Health Director. I'm here today just to thank you for the resolution for Tim and to express my deep appreciation for the work that he's done. I've known him since I was a deputy in Children's, and I've had the opportunity to work closely with him over the years. As you know, he's an incredible advocate in our community for those who are suffering with mental illness, and in particular for those who have interfaced with the criminal justice system. Tim is a kind, compassionate human being who has committed his life to this work, and the work that he has done in our community will be felt here for years. I would be remiss in not saying that one of my favorite things about Tim is our shared enjoyment of basketball and watching the Warriors in particular. And that just speaks to my gratitude for the relationship that we've built. As I was listening to the resolution, I thought, certainly DHHS Behavioral Health Admin has benefited greatly from his work, who he is, but I also as a human being feel like I've benefited greatly from him. So thank you so much, Tim, for who you are and all you've done. I will hold you with fondness and appreciation in my heart. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And let's give Tim one more final applause for retirement. And so bring it back here to the board for comments. Supervisor Bohn.
Yeah, I had
like
the
to
honor
do.
of serving on the board, I think 11 years ago at the invite of Supervisor Bass, who served on it for a I think she was there, came on the same time and helping out with Tim. And just so you know, she spoke very highly of you and probably would have liked to have been here today. But with that being said, yeah, he was kind of a force to be reckoned with. I was a new supervisor. I was new at everything, so I was kind of like my meek, mild self. And Tim, I believe, was the chair then. And he controlled the meetings. I learned more about the situations we have with mental health probably in those couple years, or 3 years on the board. I've been the alternate, but it's a great board to belong to. If you belong, show up. It's great. I know Supervisor Wilson's helping with getting it reorganized and everything, and so this will be great with what he can do with them too. So.
Great. Supervisor Bushnell and then Wilson.
Thank you. Hi, Tim. I've only met you on Zoom, so it's nice to see you in person. Thank you for your advocacy. I am the alternate, and so I have attended those meetings through the Zoom and really valued your input and what you've said, and have learned a lot over the last 2 years just in learning and listening. So I appreciate that and what you've done for Humboldt County and the thoughts that you've brought with the houseless folks. So thank you so much.
And Supervisor Wilson.
Thank you. I'm actually working on helping to reconstitute the Juvenile Justice Committee, but I have to say there is a nexus for sure, and absolutely. So I think that's part of that. I want to say a couple things. Tim is. I mean, I first met Tim through the Behavioral Health Board, but I've gotten to know him within the community a lot more since then. I would say it is one of our most important commissions, committees, boards that we have in terms of citizen participation and its influence on the county as a whole. I'm very appreciative of Tim's today, just mentioning the things haven't actually improved a lot over the time that he's been there, and all those folks that have been working on those issues. Oftentimes we just frame everything as like today it's not perfect, or we don't, there's needs for improvements, and we just really forget about how far we've come. It's just really easy to do that, and I really appreciate that reminder. The thing I really adore about Tim is he leads from a place of empathy. He leads from a place of experience. He carries with him his experiences and those things that he has seen and dealt with in his own life and those around him, and then he projects that heartfelt empathy in everything that he does to move that forward, and I'm just really appreciative of that. And I want to say that when I first got on the behavioral health board, I would call it, I think Tim is I just call it my spirit guide. I mean, really, literally, he would walked me through everything that needed to be there, why it was important, not just administratively, but from a human perspective. It would send really great articles, recommend great books, and so it just, from my experience, and just very, just gave me a lot of perspective, and I just really, really, really appreciate that. And I don't think he's going to be done doing that. I have an expectation that I'll be receiving articles and tidbits and phone calls in the future about these issues. And I want to say that when I first got on that board, which sometime my kids are in the age group that you're talking about, right? And I would say Tim really opened my eyes to see, and especially I just have to say that age group coming out of COVID now, and the experiences around that, and just the world as it is. There's a lot of work that we need to do. And prevention that we need to do, and keeping our eyes open for that generation currently. And so I just really appreciate that. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Supervisors. That's great. So anybody that would like to comment on this specific item, this would be a good time to do that. I see Vernon standing in the wings here, so welcome, Vernon.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Board, Madam CAO, County Council. My name is Vernon Price. I am a person with lived experience with mental illness and a board member. When I arrived here in this community in 2017 and had the privilege and honor to meet Mr. Ash, I was unhoused with 3 mental illnesses, off medications, but the man still met me at my place, accepted me for who I was when I couldn't even accept myself. To hear what a person had to say and to listen with action, without judgmentalness. This man is a man of integrity, a man of honor, a man of his word. And it's been an honor and a privilege to serve with him in this community and on this board. I want to say thank you, Tim, for giving me the honor to serve with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vernon. Anybody else on this specific item? Well, I think we all would agree. Thank you so much, Tim. All right, so I'll bring it back to the board for any questions on the consent agenda, clarifications.
Chair Madrone,
Yes.
I don't know how you want to handle this, but I have 0151
Yep,
with
I'm
their
gonna
hand
come
up.
to that pretty quick.
Okay, I didn't know if that was for him or
Yep,
not.
no, I'm going to go to general public comment here in a
Perfect.
second.
Awesome, thank you.
Any clarifications from the board? Seeing none, then we'll go ahead and go to public comment on the consent agenda, and please let us know which item you're speaking on. And again, if you're in Zoom, please turn off the audio feed on your feed that we have online because it's a delay. So we'll go first to the Zoom, and that is 0151 *6 to unmute. There you go. Welcome.
Hi, this is Dottie Russell. I was going to make a comment about Tim. I didn't hear any opportunity to speak before.
No worries.
Okay. I just wanted to say that listening to Tim, all of us should be able to very quickly realize the compassion and empathy that he has. Because instead of standing up and saying, yes, I did all the best things in the world, and yes, I was the best leader, and yes, I was the best person, he stood up and he said, I don't really know if I did enough. And that's what's so amazing about this person. That's what's so amazing about the people that that Tim has been able to lead and teach, is the ones that know that we're all just in this together trying to care for all of these children, any age, all of these children. And how important it is. I'm just thinking that if we could hire him or ask him to come periodically and maybe, speak to each community, speak to us and talk to us and help us share with other people the pain that families have when there's someone that has a mental illness that's not being served. So as far as an advocate for housing, it's really important that when these people need help, that we reach them before they get into homelessness, before they fall into a trap of quicksand and can't get out, because it's not fair. And they deserve to have the support and the empathy and the kindness that Tim has so graciously offered Humboldt County for so long. So Tim, from somebody that knows a lot of people that have passed away, I know that you touched so many people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dottie. Anybody else in Zoom? I don't see any other hands up at this time. And so we'll go to those here in the audience today. Welcome, and please let us know which item you're speaking on.
Ken Sawatsky, first I'm speaking on item number 6. It has to do with CEQA and how it's been handled. And this is basically for administering the Environmental Quality Act here. And unfortunately, I feel it's been played with a little bit loose as far as it's been handled in the county. Just thought I'd make that comment. I wish it was observed more to its letter, but that doesn't always seem to happen in this non-perfect world. I'd also like to make comment on item number 12. This is a report out in consent. Strongly support it being there. Humboldt County Sanctuary Ordinance Semi-Annual Report. And we don't seem to have any problems with that here. So I think that's pretty well. The report's been consistently done. My opinion was we didn't have a problem before, but now we have to comply on a semi-annual basis with this particular requirement. Lastly, I did wish to make a comment. something that should be on here, possibly wasn't, but the action summary for August 8th. I wish that would have been on this meeting. I had some comments to be on that. And there were 3 other ones on the last time, not this one. And of course, my angst will become quite obvious a little bit later on public comment on non-agendized items. Something that was not reported out there was that the IHHS workers did not get a raise, and I will comment on my angst with that. As you can tell, I'm not very happy about that particular topic.
Thank you. Anyone else here today in the audience that would like to speak on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll bring it back here to the board. Supervisor Bushnell.
I'll make a motion to approve consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Bushnell and a second by Supervisor Wilson to approve the consent agenda. Supervisor Bohn?
Yeah, it wasn't worth pulling, but we have a couple items on here today, Alder Point Road and Madrone Road. And I don't think people understand. I think we had one up in Mitchell Heights. I know we've got Scenic Drive. We've got everything else. I mean, I believe the one on Madrone was a storm from 2017. We got an approval from FEMA to go forward in 2019. Took 4 more years to do the CEQA and the environmental to get to this point where we can actually do it. The problem being is if we do it, then FEMA comes back and says, well, you guys have the money to do it. We don't need to fund you. And so Tom and his staff's hands are pretty tied. But they have to stay on this on a weekly or monthly basis going, are you guys doing anything? Are you guys going to do anything? And I think we help them stay on it because we're always calling, going, what the hell's going on here? We've got a huge project. I'm not sure which storm it was on Alder Point Road that was just let. So, I mean, these are big things, and our public works has to. People always wonder why a road is slid out. Last week we just did Monument in partnership with Ria Dell, but that's been 8 years. This is how long it takes us because, sometimes we take the back seat to, starting back with Katrina and then every other major, So I just want to recognize Public Works for hanging in there and taking all our phone calls, complaining by what's going wrong. I mean, we just last week we're getting the final approval, but they're using it and they're static. Panther Gap Road after 5 years, 6 years is open now, and all those people are. And the people that were letting us use it for a bypass, they got their properties back. So just a shout out. I don't think we notice these. We put them on consent and all of a sudden realize there's $6.5 million there that we have waited multiple years to get done. And they don't fix themselves. They don't get any better over time. So the costs just, escalate. So anyway, thanks to Public Works.
Thank you, Supervisor Bohn, for putting that emphasis on that. I think we all agree the work of the Public Works crew is just phenomenal. Back in the 60s and 70s, I believe there was over 200 staff on those crews, and now we're down to about 70 on the crews trying to handle all the brushing, all the roads, everything. So there are some open positions, I believe, still. And if anybody's looking for a job, we would love to have you join our roads crew so we can get even more done. At any rate, that will conclude our conversations around the consent agenda, and let's go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair Madrone. Supervisor Bohn?
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
And Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 4-0.
Great, thank you. And there are no items pulled from consent, so we'll go to public comment on non-agenda items at this time. We'll start with Zoom. And I do not see, well, we have one hand up, 0151, 2 hands up. So we'll start with 0151, *6 to unmute. Welcome.
Good morning. This is Dottie Russell again. We're all tired of hearing about the Christian Science Church, but the Christian Science Church was unnecessarily taken by eminent domain when there could have been an easy and simple solution. No money has been dispersed, but at the same time, there are some belongings in a small cabin that's left on the property, and now we're being told if we get the few belongings left in there that we will be trespassing. We haven't gotten any money. We haven't been paid by the other people. We only have some wood and a few things in there that belong to the church. And I don't know why it's such a hard thing for us to just be able to go in and get them. So we were told yesterday that we would be trespassing if we went to get them. It was bulldozed when people had offered to take it down for free because they could keep the wood. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of property. It's an incredible waste to use it as a parking lot, but it looks like that's what the future is for it. So there's a cabin left on it. We had requested that we could get the wood as well of the cabin so that we could build 3 or 4 tiny houses so the low-income people would have some place to live. So if we can't have a building project there for people to have a place to live, at the very least, can you help us out by discounting some of the interest and the costs and let us move forward to provide housing for these people that need it so desperately? Because we're going to see them on the streets and we're going to get calls from the coroner if we don't. So please, let's work together, get this settlement over with. I don't think it's the right choice, but it is what it is, and let us be at peace and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have 3053. *6 to unmute. There you go. Welcome.
Good morning, Thomas Mulder here. I just want to clarify you can hear me there, Chair.
Yes, we can, Thomas.
All right, thank you for the confirmation. This is me speaking as myself. Sorry, I'm just a little winded. Out here cutting some renewable resources on this landing with my son. I'm really, really thankful that we have renewable resources such as timber products that we can, as landowners, grow and harvest and sell and heat people's homes with and all those kind of things. So I'm really glad that my son has the opportunity to be in the woods and learn that skill set. I'm also thankful that he has the opportunity to, drive on miles of roads that are unregulated because, you know what, we're private property owners. It may be regulated, but whatever it is. Perceived bias and judgment. I've been talking for probably 5 years. I've been judged by many. And the one thing is I'll keep coming into the chambers, I'll keep talking, and I'll keep speaking what I believe is right and speak that with an open mind and an open heart and really try to hear people with different thoughts and theories because I really like to try to have an open mind and listen to people. It hurts me whenever I walk into a room and it's still judged, but you know what? I'm going to keep showing up and show my children and my grandchildren that you keep engaging with government and try to have a better community for all. It's really important when you have differing opinions that respectfully come to a consensus and agree upon that protocol and just want to keep growing our community in a positive way. So one day you'll probably see my son, maybe even my grandson in the chambers. I hope you have a great day and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. And seeing no more hands up in Zoom, we'll go to those here in the audience today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Madrone. My name is Wayne Ventilith, and I am the president of the Humboldt County Grand Jury Association. Last month, this board approved the responses to the findings and recommendations of the grand jury report regarding child welfare services in the court. At that meeting, I spoke about some of my concerns. Today, I would like to enhance your understanding of what a grand jury finding is and to enlighten you what actions are required before a grand jury can reach a conclusion that they in fact have discovered a finding. A finding is the heart and soul of the grand jury report. They are the truths that the grand jury has uncovered. In order for the grand jury to have a finding, they must have a minimum of 3 sources that support the finding. These sources come from interviews, documents, and observation. Most grand juries exceed 3 sources before they identify that they have a finding. Interviewing the workforce and leadership in the process being investigated is the most frequently used tool the grand jury employs to uncover a finding. Once the grand jury has a minimum of 12 jurors that believe they have a finding, they then perform exit interviews with the owner of the process and many times the department head. These exit interviews require the reading of the finding to the interviewee and asking them if it is true. If the answer is not true, then they ask why. Based on their response, the finding is either included in the report or not. Following this process, the grand jury expects that all their findings will be agreed with. For the Child Welfare Service and court responses approved last month, you agreed with only 4 of the 22 offered findings. This is why the civil grand jury becomes so frustrated with the county's perceived lack of willingness to listen and improve itself. What can you do to improve this broken system? I offer you a possible fix. When county staff have informed the board they disagree with a finding, ask them if they performed an internal investigation of the process. Because multiple county employees have told the civil grand jury different information than the official responses you are reviewing.
30 seconds.
Beware of a stated disagreement to a civil grand jury finding. I will leave a written copy of this here, and if anybody's interested in a future presentation in more detail about how a civil grand jury works, I would be glad to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next. Welcome.
Well, I want to agree with all the prior speakers during public comment. The last one, and Thomas Mulder. I'm not happy. When I'm not happy, some other people will be not happy. Now, it takes 3 people to do the right thing, and I can understand there are 2 that probably have different opinions. We can agree to disagree. The 3rd person should be doing the right thing and is not. And this is my irritation regarding the IHHS raise. I pretty well understand people and I know their hearts. Natalie Arroyo is here, and I think she has a good heart, good intentions. Caring person Steve Madrone is here, and I feel the same about him. Unfortunately, that 3rd vote is left to one person, and his name is Supervisor Mike Wilson. And I cannot understand why he's not supporting the union people, and I have a lot of angst. For some of you know, it's been perceived that I'm the author of the Humboldt Consequential, and we had such things in there as the biggest asshole of 2017 and 18. Hate to have to use that word. But I'm going to make it a hat trick to represent the 3 things. So right now I'm going to let you know about the running for this particular award, being a winner. And I'm going to come out and endorse Mike Wilson for supervisor. I'd like to have him here for 5 years total to maybe put a mirror up and let him see who he really is. And so it's a hat trick, a triple crown trifecta. And so this is the biggest asshole of the decade, the biggest hypocrite in Humboldt County, and the worst karma in Humboldt County. And right now, I hate to have to say it, but Supervisor Mike Wilson is way ahead of everybody else because of how he's dealing with these particular people. I really wish he'd look in the mirror and do the right thing for these people. Maybe there's some reason he can reach out and call me anytime he wants to and instruct me as far as some reason. He may have a philosophy. I'm not entitled to hear what happens in closed session, but still people's philosophies on things are something that can be discussed. And unfortunately, he seems to have a wing person who seems to be following the same criteria out in Blue Lake, and that's our city manager, Mandy Mager. And those 2 people are irritating me. They're not doing the right things. And then they face the angst like Supervisor Wilson's facing today.
30 seconds.
And it may not bother him at all to hear this from me. He may have no respect for me. But I think it's time that he starts looking in the mirror. And it will probably be 5 years of looking in the mirror. And people change. I can be persuaded to change my opinion. But that's my opinion right now. And I strongly appreciate the ability and the things we have in our world where I can express my opinion honestly. And it's a very honest opinion. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Please give the IHH workers a raise.
Thank you, commenter. Anybody else here today that would like to make public comment on non-agenda items? We don't respond to public comment on non-agenda items. We don't respond to public comment on non-agenda items. I'm not going to respond. Okay. You have something to say? Go ahead, Supervisor Bohn.
I think it's well known how well sometimes Supervisor Wilson and I get along, but I will give him the kudos. I think he's the only supervisor up here right now that has not taken the raise till the IHSS workers get more compensation. I don't know who's made a bigger step. I don't know about any things in the, that comes out of other people's, but I'm just saying he has stood up and made his stance in the sand, and he is financially backing, and I think he's the only one not taking the raise. So I admire him for that, and I appreciate that. So I just think if, things are going to be said, I think the whole story needs to be out there, not half the story.
Thank you, Supervisor Bohn. And with that, we'll go on to the next parts of our agenda. And we have a department report, number 1, fiscal year 22-23 grand jury responses, incorporating the city of McKinleyville to be or not to be. And Kati is here to make a presentation. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Madrone, thank you, and good morning, members of the board. My name is Kati Gallardo, and I'm the Public Information Specialist for the County Administrative Office. Before discussing the recommendations of one Humboldt County Civil Grand Jury report today, I want to express our sincerest gratitude to the members of the grand jury for their hard work that went into this report. The report before your board today is the response to the 2022-23 grand jury report titled Incorporating the City of McKinleyville to Be or Not to Be. This report primarily focuses on the incorporation of McKinleyville. The report notes that there are many steps taken prior to forming a new city. The first being an initial feasibility analysis study to determine if there is a feasible possibility of McKinleyville becoming an incorporated city. The grand jury has only required responses from your board regarding this report. The grand jury also invited responses from the McKinleyville Community Services District, or MCSD. MCSD is a public agency responsible for water and sewer, street lighting, and parks and recreation in McKinleyville. The district is governed by an elected 5-member board of directors. As it relates to this report, because the potential incorporation impacts the MCSD's boundaries or services, the district is considered an affected agency and may raise or spend money on activities related to the incorporation process. As noted in the staff report for this agenda item, the MCSD invited responses to this grand jury report have been included as an attachment to this agenda item for informational purposes only. In their response provided to the grand jury, the MCSD noted that it has substantial concern about any structural changes that could compromise its obligations to ratepayers as a result of municipal incorporation, and that they do not believe its infrastructure can be dedicated to any municipality under its existing debt covenants and rate structure, and will need to continue to operate independently. Their responses have already been received by the presiding judge and grand jury, and your board may not change or reject the district's responses related to this report per penal code. Additionally, the grand jury invited responses from the County of Humboldt's McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee. This committee was established by the board in May of 2012 and is comprised of 7 volunteers who reside, own property, or conduct a business in the greater McKinleyville area. 6 members of the committee were appointed by your board, and the 7th member is an MCSD board member, and another MCSD board member serves as an alternate member of this committee. This committee is not intended to address countywide topics. It gathers inputs from the community and comments on matters of concern which relate to the county services provided to the greater McKinleyville area, including, but not limited to, public works, health, safety, welfare, and public financing. The committee also provides advisory recommendations to the Planning Commission and to your board on proposed zoning amendments and general plan petitions and amendments located within the McKinleyville planning area. The committee does not have the authority to make, set, provide interpretation, or enforce county ordinances, policies, or laws. The committee's responses to this report were provided to your board, as this committee serves as an advisory committee to your board. Your board may receive them as written, revise them as you deem necessary, or decline to provide them to the presiding judge, as the committee was only invited and not required to respond. Today, I will be discussing the proposed responses provided by the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee, in addition to staff's proposed responses from your board. Your board may receive the proposed responses or approve them or modify them as you deem appropriate. The grand jury found that some residents in McKinleyville have expressed interest in the subject of incorporating McKinleyville, and that no in-depth initial feasibility analysis that explores the disadvantages and advantages of incorporation has been conducted. The report found that the incorporation as a city poses financial and other impacts on the residents of the proposed new city, adjacent communities, and the county as a whole, and without an in-depth initial feasibility analysis conducted by an independent and neutral party, it is needed so residents can know how these impacts will affect them. The findings note that there is no funding to support such a study. County staff proposes that your board agrees with these findings and that the advisory committee also agrees with these findings. The grand jury also found that the committee is an appointed body that provides recommendations to the County Planning Commission and your board on local issues. While the committee has received interest about incorporation from some residents of McKinleyville, the findings state that they have no ability to be responsive to these residents because they cannot implement an in-depth initial feasibility analysis. The committee agrees with this finding. However, the committee also notes that it has formed a subcommittee to conduct research and outline current findings to inform the full committee and the community about the feasibility of incorporation. It is staff's proposed recommendation that the board disagrees with this finding. While the committee does not have budgetary authority, it can be responsive to residents on incorporation in a number of ways, including using feedback it provides to provide advice to your board regarding incorporation. The focus of the grand jury's recommendations is the initial feasibility analysis to determine the advantages or disadvantages of McKinleyville becoming an incorporated city. It should be noted that the advisory committee supports all of the grand jury's recommendations. The grand jury recommends that by no later than November 1st of this year, your board provide the advisory committee and any of its subcommittees with the authority to seek other sources of funding to assist in creation of the analysis. Staff proposes that this recommendation has already been implemented by your board's adoption of the rules, regulations, and procedures for operation of the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee, which was most recently updated by your board on January 11th, 2022. While the committee may not apply for funding on its own, it does have the authority to seek other funding sources and advise the board on funding the county should consider applying for. The committee rules state, the advice to be provided by the committee includes, but is not limited to, public financing and proposed annexation. Because incorporation is the process of creating a new legal boundary, it is similar enough in nature to the statement on public financing and proposed annexation that providing advice on funding incorporation efforts can be considered to be within the realm of the committee. Furthermore, the rules, regulations, and procedures for operation of the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee provide the committee's responsibility is to advise your boards on matters of public health, safety, welfare, public works, public financing, and again, proposed annexation that may affect the local area covered by the committee. The ability to provide recommendations to the board on this matter has already been authorized. Incorporation is a complex process, and while the committee and any of its subcommittees would provide valuable input, even the initial feasibility analysis would benefit if done with the guidance of Humboldt LAFCO, which would be responsible for any later comprehensive fiscal analysis and other critical parts of the incorporation process. As such, staff proposes that the grand jury's recommendation that your board authorize the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee and any of its subcommittees to make recommendations to your board on the scope and specifics of the analysis has already been implemented. The grand jury has recommended that by no later than November 1st of this year, your board provide additional staff support to assist the committee in accomplishing the creation of an in-depth initial feasibility analysis. And staff's proposed response is that this will not be implemented. While the costs of an initial feasibility analysis would be determined by a successful request for proposals process, Humboldt's local agency formation commission, also known as LAFCO, has estimated that it may cost $60,000 or more. Additionally, any proponent or affected agency, including the county or the MCSD, may raise or spend funding for this analysis independent of any county action. Regarding the funding element of this recommendation, as you know, the county is facing a budget shortfall of more than $17 million in fiscal year 23-24. And the county is not in a financial position to allocate additional general fund and therefore staff time for this purpose. And this includes the ability to pursue funding for this analysis. While the county administrative officer does not recommend that an in-depth initial feasibility analysis be funded by the county at this time due to the county's current budget constraints, it should be noted that any member of your board could bring a discussion item forward in the future if interested in funding this analysis. The grand jury recommends that by no later than January 1st, 2024, your board create a request for proposal to solicit bids for this analysis regarding the impacts of McKinleyville being incorporated as a city, and enter into a contract with the qualified contractor chosen from the bidding process no later than March 1st, 2024. And they've also recommended that the analysis be completed by October 1st, 2024. It is proposed that your board does not implement these recommendations, as the county is not in the financial position to allocate additional general fund, and therefore at this time for this purpose, including ensuring an initial feasibility analysis is completed or pursue related funding. I will say again that while the county administrative officer does not recommend that an in-depth initial feasibility analysis be funded by the county at this time, it should be noted again that any member of your board could bring a discussion item forward in the future if interested in discussing and funding this analysis. This concludes my staff report. As mentioned previously, you may receive the proposed responses and approve them or modify them as you see fit. County staff is here and prepared to discuss this report more if you have any questions. And I would like to, once again, before I go, thank the grand jury for the work that went into this report. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And I want to say that, well, one correction, actually the MCMAC now has 8 voting members. That's an update that happened maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And the general manager, who was an alternate, is now actually a voting member. So we actually have 8, but easy to overlook because there's been a lot of little pieces to this puzzle. So great report, very detailed, thank you. And I want to thank the grand jury for their work on this as well. But most importantly, I want to thank the MCMAC for their continued service to the community. It's a really amazing group of 8 people that are very diverse and really well represent that community. And they formed a subcommittee on incorporation exploration, which is part of what has helped move this along. I want to thank this board for their continued support of the MCMAC, both in funding for their work as well as staff time. Incredible efforts by our staff to help support those efforts. And for the funding for the town center ordinance, which is this next week, getting to almost the final point where we believe a recommendation may be made to our planning commission and the county in regards to moving that forward. So McKinleyville's grown a lot in the last 10, 20 years. It's really coming, into its own. And again, we couldn't do that without the support of the county. And I think we all look forward to better budget times where there might very well be the money to do this, and or securing funding through grants and other means to work directly with LAFCO and others on getting that feasibility analysis done. What we don't have in front of you today is a report that's been produced by Cal Poly Humboldt, working in conjunction with the MCMAC members and the subcommittee, that I believe will be ready to provide to the public in the near future. And it has some amazing good details, really a lot of great information that's been updated. Last time this was looked at was over 20 years ago. So very much appreciate the work of Cal Poly on this, along with the MCMAC. So with that, I'll go to the board and see if there are any responses, comments from the board, and then we'll come out to the MCMAC members that are here in the audience today, and then the rest of the public as well. So any comments, questions from the board at this time? Seeing none? After public comment? Absolutely. Okay, let's invite the MCMAC members that are here. We have the chair and vice chair here today. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you, Supervisor Chair Madrone and Board of Supervisor members. My name is Lisa Dugan. I am the current chair of the MCMAC. And although we did not have time to pull together a public meeting, being an advisory committee to you, we follow those Brown Act rules. Both the vice chair and I felt it was important for us to be here and represent the MCMAC informally, not officially. The first thing I'd like to do is to thank a number of people. I appreciate the light that the grand jury has shown on the work that the MCMAC is doing, as well as the Board of Supervisors. I appreciate the participation of Colette Sanchi from LAFCO in the subcommittee that is doing the work exploring incorporation and what that means. Also, the attendance by Jesse Miles, the McKinleyville Chamber of Commerce Executive Director, has been invaluable. And the citizens who serve as well on that subcommittee have participated greatly and shown a lot of light from different perspectives on incorporation, what that might mean. I appreciate and thank county staff for their report, and I understand that this item came well after the budget process began and is not part of the current year budget. And so it makes a lot of sense to me that there's no money this year given the county budget. I also appreciate that they have left the door open for continuing to consider this matter. As a matter of fact, as Chair Madrone did point out, the subcommittee for MCMAC is about to bring to MCMAC some recommendations to bring forward to your board. So we should be returning here shortly with more information for you, including the Cal Poly report that Chair Madrone has mentioned. In addressing incorporation, MCMAC is responding to decades-long conversations in our community from different segments of our community. And in doing our research on the subcommittee, it seems that we could find it went back to at least the 1960s without enough information for the community to understand what that meant and if it was feasible. It's no surprise to you that McKinleyville is the third most populous area in Humboldt County. The data that was used for redistricting recently also showed that it's projected to continue to be the largest growing population. That didn't even include information that we know now that has to do with potential even more expansion, having to do with housing for wind farm, the soon to hopefully be completed town center ordinance, which will allow for greater density in our community. 2 new significant housing for seniors and other abled adults in our community. Relocations of folks in other areas because of smoke and fire and COVID and heat. Cal Poly's expansion, which will also have the need for more housing in our community. And throughout the town center planning process, the citizenry has expressed to MCMAC over and over again that it wants to retain its rural character. So that also factors in here amid all of these changes. And finally, McKinleyville is a very large piece of the county's housing element as part of its regional housing needs. So it seems that it is probably in the best interest of not just McKinleyville, but of the county to understand the feasibility of incorporation and what that might mean, whether it would help or hinder here. So it feels like the time is ripe for us all to be considering this matter. So considering all of the aforementioned information, MCMAC has committed to seeking out the information necessary to allow McKinleyville, its citizens, the Board of Supervisors, and the county enough information to determine if incorporation is a viable option and desired option for the community. And I appreciate the partnership going forward with this board in finding that information. And so we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next, we have our vice chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Madrone. Yes, I am Kevin Jenkins, the vice chair of the MCMAC and the chair of the, which we're working on this, MECE. I think that's it. McKinleyville Incorporation Exploration Subcommittee. So, yeah, thank you again for your time to allow me to speak before you. I've been involved with the incorporation question since I moved into McKinleyville in the 1990s. The chamber at that time was involved in trying to address this question, again with no resources and no funding, so it didn't go very far. That's kind of my real hope, is that we finally are able to bring this question to develop an answer. I think it's been long enough in the community. So when I became a member of the McMac, excuse me for not printing this out, it's come up before the McMac numerous times by community members. Again, it gets tabled, where are we going to get the resources to answer this question? It finally got to the point where we did create the subcommittee. One of the things that's been clear to me as this question gets brought up in our community is there's a considerable amount of emotion, but also a critical lack of information regarding whether or not incorporation is a viable option for the community of McKinleyville. So within the Incorporation Exploration Subcommittee, it's a bit of a mouthful, we've been working for about the last 12 months to understand the process of incorporation and to provide the information needed to our citizens in our community to make an informed decision that will have such an impact on their future. Throughout that process, we've had a great deal of participation and information we received from the LAFCO Executive Director, Colette Matz-Sanchi. So I really want to point out my appreciation of all of her efforts in this process. And then, as Lisa pointed out, McKinleyville Chamber of Commerce Executive Director Jesse Miles has been very active in this process. So this has certainly been a process that's involved many members of the community. We're on track at this point within the next couple of months to be able to deliver a proposal of what this process looks like. Again, as Lisa pointed out, we are working closely with Cal Poly on creating, as best we could, getting information that's available, some form of, I hate to call it an economic viability study. There's just not enough information out there right now to truly, perform that. But Josh Sedner and his team at Cal Poly have done a remarkable job of answering some of the questions, and in some cases creating, at least directing us towards some more questions that we need answers to. But that's just how this process works. And while I have a keen understanding of the financial challenges that the County of Humboldt is currently facing, I do believe that the citizens of the McKinleyville community, they're not going to allow this question of incorporation to go unanswered for much longer. So I would strongly encourage the Board of Supervisors to be able to direct county staff in the future to develop financial resources needed to provide the members of our community an answer to this important question. So if there's any questions from the board, I'm happy to answer them. I've been spending 12 months on this, and unfortunately I know more about incorporation now than I ever thought was possible. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. This has been a good time to thank county staff, CAO Hayes and Deputy Director Sean Quincy in their work to delve into, and this board for providing funding for consultants to provide some software so we could dig deeper into some of the financial information about revenues and expenses. It's simply not kept separate from the whole northern county. It's kind of incorporated in a big batch. So thank you for your efforts to help us get more refined information, and that's absolutely going to help us as we move forward. But appreciate your presentation. And at this point, we're going to go to those in the Zoom. We'll go to public comment on this item in general. And we've got a couple of hands up in Zoom, and then we'll come back here to the audience and get all the public comment. So we'll start out with 0326. You've got your hand up, and *6 to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes. There you go. Welcome.
Hi, this is Charles Wilson. I've commented on all the plans that they've had for McKinleyville for the last 30 years or something like that. I go by individual paragraphs, and I'm very thorough in looking at the different items and everything like that. It's been my experience that nobody reads these comments. I commented on the McKinleyville Community Plan. It took 7 years. I was the last one to comment on it in the last week, and planning department was, the newspaper said that the guy was muttering under his breath because he had to respond to my pages. They only gave 1 week to review it. The McKinleyville community, the recreation plan, I did that twice. I sent them the same thing 10 years after I sent the first one, and they didn't do anything on the first one. Didn't even, not a single one. I had commented on the airport master plan, the airport compatibility plan, which essentially says that the community has to be compatible with the airport, but the airport did not do a single thing to be compatible with the community. And there's various other ones there which I've commented on. But like I say, it's been my experience that nobody reads these comments and nobody takes any action on them. I remember at the McKinleyville Community Plan, if you didn't appear at the meeting, they weren't going to even consider your comments. And so it's sort of, I guess, sort of cynical on all these comment periods and everything like that. Essentially, I gave up commenting on any of the McKinleyville plans because I never got any response. So anyway, thank you for the chance to comment. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And next we have 2449 in the Zoom. *6 to unmute. There you go. Welcome.
Hello, this is Jessie Miles from the McKinleyville Chamber of Commerce. And first, I would just like to thank you for the opportunity to address the board. And basically, I don't want to repeat a lot that's already been said, but I just really want to express the importance that we see as this fastest growing population in Humboldt County right now, and really a community that is thriving in a lot of ways, and businesses that want to be an active part in their community. And I just want to express the importance we see of having this complete initial feasibility report done, and any way that funding can be made available in the future, or this can be kept top of mind to make sure that that is done as much as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And that's the last of the hands up in Zoom, so we'll bring it back here to the audience here today. And you've got 3 minutes on this topic of the grand jury report and our response to incorporation.
Ken Sawatsky, maybe you can get Cal Poly to do a 2.0. There's some unanswered questions. I think that may cut your costs way down, obviously, to have those people. Some of them can do top product. That's what they're learning to do. Strongly support finding the $60,000. We were able to find $1 million to keep the fair going out there somewhere, somehow, miraculously. I think during mid-year budget, which comes up pretty soon, not all that far off, there's frequently $400,000 or $500,000 that are available to be spent in different areas. Strongly suggest that you consider this being put near the head of the list. I think it's interesting that it's taken this long, and I strongly support some of the angst expressed by prior speakers that it's kind of time to get it done. And then you'll know, one of the biggest threats we have from our city manager in Blue Lake is if you don't do this, we're going to de-incorporate you. And I don't know whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing. You never know. But so I guess it can go both ways. And would we want to have just one person representing us, or have 5 people in a city? So there's always tough decisions out there. I did notice that that the planning for this thing and what you need to do out there is very important, and I strongly support you spending some money on this particular topic. I think Colin Fisk today wrote something about there may be housing for 3 acres right in the middle of McKinleyville because Rays no longer needs their parking lot. So all these things will come into play, and then of course consideration as far as how you develop the city. The Complete Streets guy said, well, go ahead and just make it 1 lane each way and some roundabouts. So all these things can come into play, and this is all part of being a city or not. And then everybody will know if it's not financially viable for $60,000. I think that's money well spent. Thank you for my opportunity to speak on this important topic today.
Thank you, commenter. Anybody else here today? who would like to speak on this item? Welcome.
Good morning, Supervisors, Board, County staff. I'm here to stand in solidarity with McKinleyville residents, organizers, and everybody who's working on everything that is going to need to happen for the area to thrive and succeed. It's an area where public transportation is utilized from McKinleyville to Arcata. Recently, I'm also a board member of Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities, with Colin Fisk actually being the executive director of that nonprofit. I just see a lot of potential for the area. Another thing I did in that community that really brought out its colors was I was helping the Decolonizing Economic Summit create an Earth Day celebration there at Pearson's Park. We know Pearson's Park is a very lively area. It's the power of commons that allows the community to come out, rejoice, and find adequate community, which I think that we're all striving to do and create spaces for in our areas. So simply I'm stating that I stand in solidarity. I encourage you all to continue your ongoing support to the bodies of group that are doing the work that they're doing, and envision it, right? There's only 6 miles between Arcata to McKinleyville, but the way to get there is not completely accessible to all. That's something that can be changed. It's something that we can work on as a community, and it's a way to envision what McKinleyville has the potential to becoming, as well as growing this general area, this Humboldt County, and being an example for neighboring rural communities in California, Northern California, and also our sister counties. So thank you so much for giving me a moment to speak to the public, and I appreciate all the work that has been done so far. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here today that would like to speak on this item? This is your opportunity. And I see one more person coming forward. Did you want to speak on this item? Please come.
Chair Madrone.
Yes, please come forward to the microphone. Welcome.
I too appreciate the work of the grand jury and the board. I think with the growth, it's long overdue. It's spillover for a community gentrifying people out every day, Arcata. And I don't know how much longer incorporation can be avoided. The MCSD runs things like the parks and the trails. It's done by the county. So there's a lot of overlap with the county. I would like to say that this is a small community, and a lot of times there's nothing going on, and then sometimes there's 2 things going on at the same time. And the Thursday night summer concert series is the same time as Eureka's. And to me, it'd be easier for one of those to change so that people that are looking for something free to do for community, those are family-friendly events. But I think finding the money is an important thing. And there should be more benefits. At this point, it's a larger than Arcata, the second largest city in the county. And more decades should not pass before this issue is addressed.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, we'll bring it back here to the board. And so anybody out there with a whole bunch of money that wants to be a benefactor to this, I'll just say, if you got $250,000 sitting around and you'd like to do something really great, this would be that thing to do. 60 grand or up to 100 grand for the feasibility analysis, and then possibly a couple $100,000 for the EIR to get it into place. So anyway, if there's anybody out there that wants to be a benefactor, I'm not going to be shameless. I'm going to put out a shameless pitch here. So with that, I'll bring it back to the board for any comments. Supervisor Wilson?
Thank you, Chair Madrone. Simply put, I support moving forward in whatever way we can with the feasibility study. I have to, in reference to how I generally look at a lot of things like this, if the community of McKinleyville was incorporated today, would we be considering unincorporating it? And that's highly unlikely. I live in an incorporated community. We would never consider unincorporating in this time. Fortuna wouldn't consider it. Eureka wouldn't consider it. And so population and density and size of McKinleyville, if incorporated today, would probably not be very interested in unincorporating for all the reasons that we talk about, and especially around self-determination in terms of planning. And you can see the design, the way the community's been designed in McKinleyville is a reflection of its inability to have that self-determination. And so I do know that there has been discussions or, state law with relationship to impacts to counties from a financial perspective, but I don't, that for me, that's just not the highest priority at this moment. I think the highest priority is the benefit and ability of a community the size of McKinleyville to really do what it needs to do. And honestly, if it can be better, it will probably be an economic benefit to the entire county. I would put it under a floats all boats situation. And so from that perspective, I'm supportive of that. If Supervisor Madrone wants to bring this back for further discussion with relationship to funding and those sorts of things, I think it's of value and we should consider it. Thanks.
Great. Any other board member? Okay. Supervisor Bohn.
Well, I was here when Ryan started the McMack, and I think they've done some great things forward. This has come, I know, as Kevin said, that Mr. Jenkins said, that he's learned more about incorporation because it's just not, say, we don't just flip a switch. Humboldt has a lot of, I guess you would say, assets. And I know in there it says something about we could contract the sheriffs. You see we're having problems with that with Trinidad, with Blue Lake, actually with some of our tribes that would like to, at times, had wanted to contract and have gone out on their own. It's a big hill, but I think it's a hill worth climbing so we can actually see where we're at. I'm not sure if Lisa or Kevin said there's great passion for this, but there has to be a hell of a lot more information, and then I can just imagine what you guys are going to name the town, because it'll obviously have to be, you had a chance to get a statue a while ago and you passed on it. So I'm just saying as we move forward, I think the information is king. Passion is needed, but information floats, as Mike would say, floats the boats. And if it's economically feasible, I always talk about, Cutton and Myrtletown, Humboldt Hill, Pine Hill, and everything else, the little outskirts of Eureka, depending how big you go, you're getting close to 14,000, 15,000 around those areas. And if you want to go out to Fields Landing and King Salmon, you pick up another 1,200, 1,400. So I'm just saying, we've got a lot of areas. They're not as exciting because they don't have a large retail presence that's going to drive the bus. But it's not an easy town. There's like 412 incorporated cities in California. I think the last one that incorporated was in 2011 down in Riverside. So it's not a lot of people are jumping on this bus, so we need to make sure that we have all the information. If it's feasible and that's what the folks want, there's no reason we don't do what the people want. It's just there's a lot more to it, and this got bogged down. This was brought up in 2012, 13. It was brought up, as Kevin, it's been brought up a lot, and it gets bogged down like, we have to pay for that. They're still going to own that. And there's so much to it, but I think we owe it to those 16,000 residents who probably sit on each side of the fence to what we can do. But understand that it's, they talk about the fire, they have their fire department through a JPA. Well, so does Eureka have their fire service through a JPA, I believe, through Humboldt Bay Fire. I'm not sure how Arcata McKinleyville Fire, I don't know how, that's how they usually set up, as a separate, Fortuna has an all volunteer, or 95% volunteer. So as we move forward, yeah, Steve, you know a lot of people, you could probably go out and get that 250,000 pretty easy.
I'm working on it. Keep making pitches.
Yeah, so as we move forward, I think if that's what the citizens want, and I'd love to see the information. But as it was stated, our financial situation now is, we're at a road patching, sheriff's on patrol, IHSS has requests. We've got a lot of requests out there. So where do we cut from to do this? And I mean, it might be there at the mid-year. I don't know. So I appreciate grand jury. I appreciate especially the McMack and everything they've done on this, our staff. But I guess now we just, we keep moving forward as we can. And like it's been said, Cal Poly wants to help. So use them.
Yep.
So.
Thank you, Supervisor Bohn. Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, and thanks to the grand jury and to the McMack for being here for comment. I had a couple thoughts. I'm wondering, and I know the McMack has done a ton of investigating. As you said, you know more about incorporating now than you ever wanted to. Other cities or incorporated areas in Humboldt, for instance, Riadel, they struggled with not having a big tax base, and so they've had to do alternative things. And I'm wondering if you've spoken with them at all, just to see, you guys have a bigger constituent base, so you would have, and you have a bigger tax base, but just to see what their struggles were, because that, gives you some factual base. Also, I'm wondering if you guys have considered maybe just a business improvement district, which is not incorporating, so you wouldn't need like a sheriff's department town hall, or those types of things, which is an alternative to incorporating, but not as much government base. And sometimes can be a little bit cheaper than incorporating, but still can lead to a base of money, which is what you would probably be looking for. And so, and also, I want to just really rely on Supervisor Madrone, because that is his district, but it's some alternatives that I've been looking for in the unincorporated areas of my own district to try to help, steer those unincorporated areas that need a little bit of money base. And so I'm just, thinking kind of outside the box of incorporation that doesn't require so much government oversight, and still get you some financial base to help run your town. And so I do think that key is, the investigating part, getting the basis back, and if Cal Poly is willing to help, that's great. But also thinking outside the box at other opportunities that can bring you some revenue, because that ultimately is what you're looking for to run your town. So thanks again to the grand jury and to the CAO's office, and I look forward to hearing more.
Great, thank you very much. And this would be a great time to thank Supervisor Ryan Sundberg for his visionary and strong efforts to have work with his board at that time to actually create the McMack and have that vision of how that could help this community move forward. So thank you, Mr. Sundberg. Revenue neutrality is one of the difficult parts of incorporation, whereby in incorporating a new city, we can't harm the county. And so there's this balancing act that has to occur there that is quite complicated. And one of the things that we know has made it difficult for new cities to incorporate is the fact that new cities do not get a share of the vehicle license fees, which all other incorporated cities get. And so there's a lot of talk in the legislature, and again, I'll just put out the pitch here to our legislative representatives that whether it's legislation that just simply allows McKinleyville to be able to get vehicle license fees as part of incorporation, or whether it's a statewide effort, it'd be great for RCRC and CSAC to support those efforts, because that's going to be critical to moving forward as well. So with that, I think we've had a robust discussion. We've heard from the public. I'm looking for a motion here.
I will move staff recommendations.
Second. All right, we have a motion by Supervisor Bushnell and a second by Supervisor Wilson to approve the staff recommendation, which is basically to accept the report and do a couple of other items of moving forward. So with that, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair Madrone. Supervisor Bohn?
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Affirmative.
And Chair Madrone?
You betcha. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate all the efforts on the county staff's part, as well as the Micmac and the Micey, little Micey running around the community doing good things. Thank you, guys. All right, with that, we have one more item on our agenda, and that is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works or designee to acquire and accept interest in real estate on behalf of the Board of Supervisors. And it looks like we have Deputy Director Bronco here to present. Welcome.
Good morning.
And we need to read into the record the ordinance first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Madrone. Currently before the board is an ordinance of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Humboldt renewing the Humboldt County Public Works Director's authority to acquire interest in real property pursuant to sections 246-4 through 246-7 of Title II of the Humboldt County Code.
Great. And do I need to open a public hearing? No, not on this one. No. Okay, great. All right. Deputy Director Bronco.
Good morning. My new title is County Surveyor.
That's true. Thank you.
This is a routine ordinance that needs to be reaffirmed every 5 years to delegate authority to the Public Works Director to accept interest in real property. This particular item reduces the volume of agenda items that the Land Use Division would be presenting forward for the acceptance of interest in real property associated with roadway improvement projects. Because it is required by state law for that delegation to be reaffirmed every 5 years, that authority is expiring this September, so we're bringing it forward today to allow that authority to be extended for another 5-year period.
Great. Seems pretty simple, straightforward. Reduces workload. We like it. Any comments, questions from the board? Supervisor Bushnell.
So looking at it, it doesn't, I didn't see any red lines or any, what looked like any changes, but I want like to know if there are any changes from 5 years ago?
No, it's same recycled agenda item from 5 years ago.
Okay, and I'm assuming the chair would like to go out to public comment first before motion, so I will wait.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any other clarifying questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll go to the Zoom. And there are no hands up in the Zoom at this time, so I'm going to go to the, oh, there's a hand up, barely made it under the wire. And that is 0151, *6 to unmute. Welcome.
Hi, Dottie Russell from Southern Humboldt again. I just wanted to make sure that if the Public Works is able to buy property, that I don't see why they wouldn't be able to do that, but I think that it should be fair market value. So if that isn't in whatever needs to be put in place, I think it should be not that they're taking it by eminent domain or taking it for half what it's worth and all that stuff, and not by tax sales, but that it should be an honest, fair acquisition that involves fair on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And then we'll go to those in the audience here today. Welcome.
Public should know, as far as public attending, it's Holly Kringle and myself at this time. We're down to that, whittled down there. Strongly support this. I think this originated, and I could be wrong, I think the cap's $50,000. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. It might have gone back to 2007 or something like that. And I would just question whether it might be appropriate, if allowed legally, to go ahead and put a CPI or increase on that for inflation, because what you can buy back then, and I don't know what time that was adjusted, but I do strongly support the flexibility, and as mentioned, it cuts down on the time in the chamber. Totally trust Tom Matson, who is staff in the room here, as far as doing these things, and these smaller little things should be delegated to competent people. But again, you may wish to consider, either 5 years from now or at some time, consider increasing that if you're legally able to do so. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for that. And I'll bring it back to County Surveyor. Do you want to respond to any of the two comments on market value and CPI?
The CPI would be something for the state legislator to go ahead and take care of. It's codified in the law, the maximum threshold that the Public Works Director could go ahead and acquire interest in real property up to. As far as the acquisition of property, the county does go ahead and follow the Caltrans and federal highways requirements and produces valuations of the property and offers fair market value for the acquisition of the necessary right-of-way for the road improvement projects.
Great. Asked and responded to. Appreciate that. Okay, and with that, we've had our public comment. We'll bring it back to the board and Supervisor Bushnell.
I'll make a motion for staff recommendations.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any additional conversation, discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair Madrone. We'll start with you.
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yep.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn? Yep. Thank you. Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, and then we have an 11 o'clock closed session that we'll have to wait till 11 to read into the record. But before we go to recess, I wanted to make a quick report from CAL FIRE. I'm sure many of you also experienced the thunder and lightning last night at 2 in the morning. And this is a report from Kurt McCrae, the chief of our local CAL FIRE. August lightning update, August 15th, 9:30 this morning. Multiple fires are ranging from small spots to largest, approximately 5 to 10 acres. Locations: Mad River, Dinsmore, Pilot Rock, Willow Creek, Upper Little River, Hoopa, Orleans, Lost Man Creek, and the Bald Hills. So it really came over to the coast, as I think many of us experienced last night. CAL FIRE air and ground resources are engaged. Forest Service engaged as well. No adverse fire behavior observed on any of the fires at this time. So stay vigilant, and let's pray for our folks that are in harm's way out there, and appreciate CAL FIRE and the Forest Service and all the resources they bring to bear. So with that, we are in recess until 11 o'clock, and then we'll read in our closed session item at that time and then go right back into recess. Thank you very much. Okay, we got 3 people. Let's go ahead and get started. You guys ready? All right, welcome back to our Board of Supervisors meeting here on August 15th. And we have a closed session item, and if we could read that into the record, please.
Thank you, Chair Madrone. It is the intention of the board to meet in closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9D1 in order to discuss existing litigation in the case of Greenleaf Nurseries LLC et al. Versus County of Humboldt et al., Humboldt County Superior Court Case Number CV 2300937.
Great, thank you very much, and we'll go to public comment. Do we have anybody in Zoom?
No, Chair Madrone, we don't.
Okay, and we'll come here to the audience here today. Anybody that would like to speak on this item, please come forward. This is your chance for a 3-minute comment on topic.
I get tired of people suing Humboldt County, so I wish they'd just stop. Maybe that's the message to send out to the Greenleaf Nurseries LLC. I think I'd just go ahead and drag that one out for about 10 years and see if they last that long.
Thank you. Any additional comments, please? Welcome.
Good morning, still. Thomas Mulder here. Just showing my son that, his First Amendment right to speech and addressing the topic at hand. We're in a really tough financial position in the county, so anything that you can do to protect resources of Humboldt County for the citizens of Humboldt County, I would appreciate that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, commenter. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board, and I believe we are in recess for our closed session. And how long do we expect? Estimate?
I would say approximately 15 minutes.
Pretty quick then. So we'll be back here in approximately 15 minutes or a little longer. We are in recess. Okay, we are back from our closed session, and we have a report out.
Thank you, Chair Madrone. With regard to item G1, the board voted 4-0 with Supervisor Arroyo absent to authorize the risk manager to enter into an agreement with the Mitchell Law Firm for defense of the case of Greenleaf Nurseries LLC et al. Versus County of Humboldt et al., Humboldt County Superior Court Case Number CV 2300937.
Great, thank you very much. And do we have anybody in Zoom? Nobody in Zoom, and nobody here in the audience, so I don't see any public comment. So at this point, we are adjourned. Thank you.